I'm going to ask you to do something, okay? I'm going to ask you, think about December. Regular season's done. Conference championship Saturday is done. The playoff field is set. We know who's facing who. We know who had a great year, who had a terrible year, who had, enough gas to get to November, but not through November, who's getting fired. We know all that by December. I'm asking you to name me the games that are going to go the furthest in deciding that picture. That's what we call a hinge game. And I want to talk about the biggest hinge games in college football this year to start the show tonight. This is in no particular order, although it's going to sound like it's in order, because the first game is noon Eastern time in week 1, and that's Texas-Ohio State. That's AP 1 versus 2. That is JP poll 1 versus 2. Here is why I am going with this. This is kind of obvious. I feel like, obviously, there's high expectation. Obviously, there's a lot of unknown. It's college football. It's not the first time, won't be the last time. But I think someone's hype meter pegs off the chart after this game. Someone's panic meter pins off the chart after this game, especially if Texas loses. I am of the opinion there's more pressure on Texas here because they're the ones who didn't just win a national championship. They're also the ones who happen to have Arch Manning starting at quarterback for them. And the Ohio State quarterback situation, we'll see. I've got my own swinging philosophies on that. It's not just who starts against Texas. It's who plays well against Texas. Do we see multiple quarterbacks in that game? But yeah, so that is, someone's going to win that thing, hypes through the roof. Someone's going to lose that thing, unjust panic through the roof. Next game features a team that features 2 teams actually that are not on that board right now. Bradley's showing you the odds to win the whole thing this year. And you know who you don't see there? You don't see Illinois, because Vegas hates Illinois. And you don't see USC, because apparently everyone hates USC. USC goes to Illinois in week 5. I think this is the hinge game of the year for USC. I think it's the hinge game of the year for Illinois. I think it's one of the big hinge games in college football this year, because what we could have coming out of this game, if USC wins, is a 5-0 University of Southern California Trojan football team coming home with a bye to get ready for Michigan coming to town, and then taking a trip to Notre Dame. And I've just got news for you. If USC's 5-0 with Michigan coming to town, that's the game of the week. And a white-hot spotlight is on the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Now, if Illinois were to lose that game in that scenario, it's not like it's the end of the world, but it was their first shot against a big boy at home and they lost it. And then a couple of weeks later, they'll have Ohio State coming to town. And what they'd probably be saying if Illinois lost is, we saw their ceiling last year and they never got any better than that this year. Of course, Illinois could win the game. And if Illinois wins that game, it's off to the races time for Illinois. Because then you're talking about maybe the ability to lose a game or two and maybe still be in the Big Ten title picture, the playoff picture. So that's the whole Illinois piece. And then the USC piece is you'll never convince me USC is going to have a great season this year if they don't beat Illinois. So if they lose to Illinois and then they go downward spiral at the end of the year, you will look back and say that Illinois game, that's where that started. So that's why that's a hinge game. Let me take you to week 4. And let me take you to beautiful, picturesque, I don't care what the haters say, Norman, Oklahoma. Auburn at Oklahoma in week 4, that's the stuff that hinge games are made of. First, we get Jackson Arnold going back to Norman. Yes, that's on the schedule this year in case you didn't notice. We've got a couple of coaches that are on every hot seat list I have seen out there. Hugh Freeze at Auburn, Brent Venables at Oklahoma, everyone's talking about it. I don't think we've done a hot seat segment. I don't think we have. If we did, yeah, those guys would be on it. Auburn's already played at Baylor by now. Oklahoma's already faced Michigan by now. Are they both undefeated? Do they both have a loss? Is one of them in wounded animal do-or-die mode? I'm very high on Oklahoma. Obviously, you saw that the other night. The JP poll came out. I had Oklahoma top 10. I don't have Auburn in the top 20. I think I've got them in the top 25. I think they're a very good quality roster, but they're 2 wild card teams, which we'll talk about later in the show. But I want you to think about this. This game right here is where the season will turn one way or the other for both teams. Auburn wins this thing, and that probably also means they were good enough to go on the road and beat Baylor, I think. And at that point, they're kind of off to the races. Very challenging schedule, but they're off to the races, and they start to build up some equity, build up some confidence. You're not going on the road and winning at Oklahoma if Jackson Arnold didn't play good. I mean, he's got to face that defense, He used to face it every day in practice. If he goes into Norman and they win, I mean, Auburn was able to move the ball. Auburn was able to have some synergy about itself offensively, which means if Auburn's got that and they prove it by beating Oklahoma, Auburn's good enough to compete with anyone because their roster's that good. If Oklahoma were to win this, I think Oklahoma could be undefeated going into the Red River Shootout, a game known by no other name than that on this show. And if that is the case, then I'm going to feel good because it means the JP poll has been validated and vindicated. However, either person, either head coach that loses this game, I want you to think about the uncomfortability. I want you to think about what we would call the pucker meter on this show because you've got over half of your season left to go. This could be the first or, God forbid, the second loss for someone. Look at that. That's going to be a really good gift. Someone is going to take that out of context. That's probably going to circulate on the USC message boards. If you're listening on podcast, don't worry about it. Next up, back to week one. Hinge game in week one. Of course, I can't believe I even didn't lead with this one. LSU and Clemson. LSU at Clemson, week one, already a hinge game. That's the beauty of college football. Don't ever let them tell you this isn't the greatest sport in the world. When you can be sitting on the edge of your seat, when your fingernails can be bitten down to the nubs, and that includes people who don't even bite their fingernails, that is a sign that you still have a very, very valuable regular season. Now, has it been diminished a little bit? Yes, but this is still a great regular season. And evidence of that will be in the Clemson Death Valley on Saturday night in week one. Clemson favored by 3.5 right now. LSU has been crippled by slow starts. And if they have another one here, then it could really set the train with a flat wheel down a very, very treacherous set of tracks. The flat wheel, you know, that's a problem on a train. That's when you hear it go thump, 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 thump as it comes through. It's because it's got a flat spot on it. Normally, it's faulty braking that does that. A more seasoned engineer would never let that happen, but you never know because the LSU train has gotten out of the gates very slowly in week ones. So if they go in there and they lose, hey, they're a 3.5-point dog. It's a national championship contender that you're losing to in their own building. No one cares. They're still going to rag you. And then you've got to come and you got to play Florida a couple of weeks later. Then you got to go to Ole Miss, and you got South Carolina at Vanderbilt, Texas A&M. All the games I just listed are before Halloween. So if you start slow, it's actually if you start with anything other than an outright win on the road, it's going to be the same old until you change the tune on that. Clemson was 0-3 against the SEC last year. So this is an immediate opportunity to rectify that. It's an immediate opportunity to announce to the world we're more than just an ACC championship contender, because everyone has LSU in some order in the top 4 of the SEC. So if you beat them at home, that's a big deal. It doesn't guarantee anything, but think about it. We're talking about it through the prism of December. If Clemson is the ACC champ and they got one of the top 4 seeds in December, you'll probably be saying, hey, man, this team showed what it was made of early on. Remember that LSU game. If LSU wins, if it's a different season for LSU, in all likelihood, that vibe will have cranked up on the road at Clemson in week one. Now, I'm a believer that LSU could validate itself quite nicely and lose a competitive game there. But I think I'm in the minority on that. Next up, all the way to week 14. This is the easiest one on the entire board. Ohio State at Michigan. This is rivalry week. This is the last week of the year. I've been to 3 of these last 4 games. It's amazing. It's the greatest rivalry in college football. This is the end of the year, which means if Bryce Underwood is starting for Michigan, he's got an entire season under his belt. It's his first start in the game. It's his first start in the rivalry, if he is the starting quarterback, which we think he will be, but he'll have a whole season under his belt. Also, there's that pesky little 4-game losing streak or winning streak, depending on which side of this you're on. Now, some people will tell you that because of the way last year played out, this game doesn't mean as much anymore. They're wrong, but they will tell you that. I am here to remind you that you have a 1-game sample size. So last year is not forever. Last year's last year. What I mean by that is, you saw Ohio State go into this game. They lost it, but they still won the national title. And so your mind tells you, oh, well, that means the outcome of the game didn't mean nearly as much as it could have. Well, part of that's true, but I also want to remind you, Ohio State had wiggle room when they went into that game. What if Ohio State's a 2-loss team here? What if they lose to Texas and then they drop, a game at Illinois or something like that. So they got one conference loss. So they're going into Michigan, and they know, hey, if we win this thing, we're going to the Big Ten title game. We're in the playoff. But difference being, unlike last year, they don't have any wiggle room. There's no safety net under them. They know if they lose the Michigan game, they're out of the whole thing. They're out of the playoff entirely. Because that could be the case. You don't know that 3 seed Ohio State's going into Ann Arbor. It could be 11 seed or projected 11 seed Ohio State. My point there is, could it be a win or go home situation for them? Could Michigan have surprised people and be in the Big Ten title race and the playoff race? Hinge game either way. It's a hinge game no matter if the playoff exists or not, but especially because it does. Hey, wait just a second. Appreciate you guys watching. Most of you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. It's free. It helps us keep the show free, and that's how we do college football year-round. All right, back to the video. I've got the underrated game of the year in the SEC here. So let me take you to Week 6. No one's talking about this game. I have no idea why. It's Texas-Florida. Texas goes to Florida this year, Week 6. I think it's the underrated game of the year in the SEC because no one's talking about it. Everyone's talking about Texas-Ohio State, Texas-Georgia. People are talking about Florida going to LSU. They're talking about Florida-Miami. No one's talking, outside of Gainesville and Austin, about Texas going to Florida. Both teams are off a bye here. It is Arch Manning's second really tough road game. He will have gone to Columbus, Ohio in Week 1. This is Gainesville. I remember I went to Austin back in the spring, and they were already talking about this game. Logistically, they were talking about how tough it was to find accommodations for the team. Competitively, they were talking about how misremembered last year is because Lagway didn't play in this game last year. So, Florida got splattered when they went to Texas, and everyone looks back on that game, oh, we blew them out last year. It'll be tougher. It's a good home field, the swamp and whatever. But we'll go in there. We'll take care of business. Well, you misremember last year's game. Last year's game has no bearing on this year's game. Now, I am a believer that Florida's the real deal this year. For the record, I think Texas is too. But no one doubts that about Texas. There are people who doubt it about Florida. This is the game where they'll announce that. If I'm right, this is the game where they'll announce it. Because they could go to LSU and win. But the thing about it is that could move LSU to 1-2 for all we know. Florida could go to Miami and win. And people would tell you, Miami, though, man, they're so Jekyll and Hyde. They're overrated. They're a paper tiger. That could also move Miami to 2-2 or something like that. This right here is either an undefeated Texas or a one-loss Texas, and that loss came on the road to Ohio State, and now their back's against the wall already, and they come into Gainesville. That right there, depending on how this season turns out in December, for both of these teams, this is the game where it will have turned for both of them. I'm fully convinced of that. Next up, back to Week 1. See, I told you we weren't going in order. Yeah, Notre Dame at Miami is absolutely a hinge game. Notre Dame at Miami, Week 1, Sunday night game. Remember, standalone game. So no matter what your team does Saturday, you got time to watch this one on Sunday. Miami started hot last year. We were at the game in the swamp, and they went in there and they handled Florida. Even though the season ended up being somewhat of a disappointment, it didn't start that way. Notre Dame, same way. Now, Notre Dame goes all the way to the national title game. Well, where did that downhill momentum really start? It started on the road at Texas A&M, also a Week 1 game. So both of them started hot last year. Someone's got to lose this game. The Notre Dame quarterback situation is still very much in a state of flux. That is not the case from Miami. It's not who's going to start. It's how good will that starter be. Now, they're really high on Carson Beck. They don't think the injury thing is an issue at all. They think his head is in the right space. They think he's plenty talented enough. They believe they've got a good enough supporting cast around him. That's why God makes us play the games. So you don't just have to think it. We can find out. But if that's right, if all that's accurate, you'll know because Miami will show it against Notre Dame. If Notre Dame's got the kind of staying power instead of just kind of a flash in the pan, one-year wonder sort of vibe, you'll know it in Week 1. Now, you could also know that when one of these teams loses a really, really tight game and you come out saying, man, both of those teams are probably going to make the playoff. I always go to this. What happens if someone loses 30-13? It is Week 1 college football. You don't know anything. Miami's secondary was terrible last year. Notre Dame's wide receiver core is much better this year. Could they just pop the top off Miami over and over and over again? Could Miami dominate the line of scrimmage? Because that's not something anyone really does against Notre Dame. What if they do that in week 1? What if Miami wins and you look at it and you say, dude, Carson Beck didn't even play a great game, and we still won this thing. How good could we be once everything clicks? You could say the same thing about Notre Dame. I mean, we went on the road. That place was packed down there, and it will be. Half of them will be Notre Dame fans, but it will be. That place was packed. And, I mean, it was our quarterback's first start on the road. We won, and they played C-plus football. That kind of stuff could happen, too. Big Hinge game. Next one is on approximately no one's radars outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I don't even think this is on a Clemson radar. But it's on mine. Week 3, Clemson at Georgia Tech. Now, this is me thinking about how I think the season's going to go, because I believe Georgia Tech's going to be in the ACC championship race through the entire season. If I'm right about that, maybe this game was a core reason why. I'm not talking about playing competitively. I'm not talking about hanging in there with Clemson. I'm talking about beating them. I'm talking about doing what you almost did on the road against Georgia last year, what you did do at home against Miami last year. Not a lot of people are looking at this game right now. That's okay. That's what makes it a Hinge game. Maybe a little off the radar, but I think it's a Hinge game. I think that if I'm right about Georgia Tech, it starts here. Also, what is Clemson's record coming into this game? Clemson's already come off the game, obviously, against LSU, so they could be in wounded animal mode. They could be in must-win mode. But remember, LSU's not a conference game. Just like Georgia Tech goes to Colorado week 1, that's not a conference game. So this is the first really big conference game for these teams. I'm excited about it. That's a really underrated game. Next up, it's not underrated at all. This is going to be on everyone's radar. This will be everyone's game of the year, top 5 candidate. It was last year, too. Alabama goes to Georgia in week 5. Bama at Georgia in week 5 is a rematch of last year's game in Tuscaloosa. Remember, it was a 5-Chalai Classic. Jesse, I don't remember how many 5-Chalai rated games we had last year. There was only a few of them, and this was one of them. I think this has been the most important rivalry in the SEC for a while now. And if you want to know what a paper popper stat is to back up that statement, 10 of the last 11 SEC champions were one of these two teams. And you knew they had dominated the league. Did you know they had dominated the league that severely? LSU 2019, it literally took Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Ed Orgeron to come in and say, we're just going to hit pause on this for 1 year, and then you guys can go right back to normal. So, no one loses this game and is out of anything in all likelihood. However, if Bama goes into Georgia and wins, you can just write the headlines in all caps. It's true. Kirby didn't just have a Saban problem. He's got an Alabama problem. Conversely, if Kirby and Georgia beat Alabama, is that Bama's only loss so far? Are they going to lose more games? Was it a competitive game, or did Bama get beat like they did at Oklahoma last year? Did they get beat like they did at Vandy last year? Did they get beat like they did at Tennessee? Is it the kind of game where you say, this team's got a ton of holes? Like, I thought they were good, but man, Kirby, they just dissected Alabama. They just exposed them. Something's going to be true. I think that'll be a Hinge game that starts setting a narrative very much in motion. And the last one, and certainly not the least one, because I only wanted to go 10 deep. I could have just gone the whole show on this. Penn State at Ohio State is one of the Hinge games of the entire country, of the entire season. Penn State at Ohio State in week 10 means someone's probably punching their ticket to Indianapolis by this point. Someone's probably, you'd be hard-pressed to convince me the winner of this game is not going to play for the Big Ten championship. Let me put it that way. This is the game for Penn State. Yes, they've got Oregon in Happy Valley week 5. It's the whiteout game. It's a night kickoff. It's great. It's great. That's not the game that Ohio State and Penn State folks are really circling. In fact, Penn State folks, that's not the one they're circling. They're excited about the Oregon game. They've got the Ohio State game circled. And you know why? Because they know they should beat Oregon. They deep down know. They don't know that they're going to. They know Oregon's got a new quarterback. They're coming across the country. We're off a bye. We finally get the night game we want. We got our best team we've had in a decade plus. We should beat Oregon. but we don't know about the Ohio State game. We hadn't been able to beat Ohio State. Is it 2016, Jesse? Is that the last time that Penn State beat Ohio State? So by my math, I mean, Stats and Info ran the numbers. That's 9 years ago. You had a kid the same year that Penn State beat Ohio State last. That kid can play Little League now. He can play A-ball. I mean, he could be facing like real live pitching instead of just a coach throwing to him. It's been that long. That's the game. That's the game. Because if Penn State's for real this year, then they win a game like that. And Penn State could still be for real, but if it's just the same old Penn State, they go and they lose that game 27-16 or 27-20, something like that. And they're still going to go to the playoff. It'd be tough to see Penn State not going to the playoff, but that's where it hinges. That's really where you train yourself. Nope, don't buy in. Don't even get worked up about Penn State. It's just the same old, same old. Or, wow, it really is different this year.